at this point just so I can make sure I'm writing my query right. And then these next fields, status, type, employee name, the only thing that I really want to point out here, this is the information I'm selecting from eLogger, but this as status 64, this is telling eLogger where to put it. So over on the right hand side here, the same place we got those other numbers from, this is saying where to put it. So if this was gone and I clicked on the status 64, it's going to put it back in there for me, and all it's saying is select this field of information and put it up here under this first field, and so on and so forth for each of them. Then this from statement, the from statement is saying select it from eLogger, and it gives the different table names that the information's coming out of. And then down towards the bottom here, you start seeing these numbers that we just looked up before we started. It's saying the type field is number 43, the employee name is number 44, and so on and so forth. So it's getting our information there. And then it's also saying all this date jumbly mumbly stuff is saying grab any date that's in the previous month. It's looking at today's date, and it's grabbing everything from the previous month. Okay, so that is your SQL 101 in a real hurry class today. But then what I can do is I can actually test my query, and it wants a log entry ID, and I just know that I have number 7 in there. So I'm going to click test query, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so you can see what happened. First thing is you're going to see this error message displayed on the bottom, and that's because I selected the log time. Remember I said I wanted to validate that I had the correct information. So I have a column for my log date and time, and then you can see I had 4 records. I've got my statuses, my types, my employee names, and my description. So I've been successful in my query here. Okay, so hopefully everybody is following me so far and is not too confused. We are going to go back to the home page, the user side of the application, and we are going to go ahead and change our dates back to what they were before we started, before I looked at my May data, because the View Logs page does retain all these settings when you change them until you actually close down the browser. Now, a couple things you're going to notice. Number one, I have a required entry up at the top of the page. In case you didn't know, you can set the color for the required entries on the Settings tab in the Administration section of the application. Under the Settings tab, you can pick a beautiful color like this. I think this was magenta that I chose. But this is my reminder to create the Incident Monthly Report. Now, when I go ahead and click Edit on this, this is how I make it go away. I do it. I click Edit. You can see that, you know, it's filled in the shift and the crew and the location and the log for me. And it says create the Incident Monthly Report. So to do that, since I'm working with the external data query, it actually has given me a link to get the data, and that exists in 2 places. It shows up once with each template that you create, and then down on the bottom there's a Get All Data button, and if you have multiple templates on one log entry, that will get the data for all the sections. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Get Data, and you can see now it's gotten my 4 records. That date time field has disappeared since that's not really what I'm asking for. And now I don't think I would actually include this note here. I would say something like for May 2012, and I would save that. Okay, so now you can see we're returned to our home page, and we have this wonderful incident report sitting here. And now we can go ahead and click on the report, the PDF. And now I have exactly the kind of report that I was looking for. So if you can picture it, you could actually create multiple templates. Let's say you wanted one for incidents, And then below that you wanted one for maybe high priority work orders created. Below that, maybe you want to list all your high priority track it concerns that were generated, or maybe you want to look at the alarms that went off during the month or something like that. You can actually create yourself a really nice monthly report just going back to different systems and having a section for each of these on this monthly report. And this could be a daily report, a weekly report, an annual report, whatever it is you were actually going after. But that's how the external data query works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause for just a second and see if anybody has any questions, and if not, we'll move on to looking at the shift turnover stuff. I am going to switch gears then, and we are going to talk about shift turnovers. And this idea actually came from National Grid, and they had requested a way to do a compilation of entries that were made throughout the day and trying to figure out how they could collect certain entries onto one report at the end of the day, and then have somebody actually sign off on those that they've read them. The new person coming on shift has read all the shift turnover items for the day. So here's what we came up with. We actually have a series of entries. Hang on a second here. So our logs are alarms, general, incidents. I'm going to skip the monthly report one because that one doesn't apply. And then we have operations. And anytime somebody enters, let's, for example, say an alarms. Let's say we had a fire alarm going off. The user has to decide whether or not that is worthy of being included on the turnover report for the incoming shift. Okay, so down on the bottom here we created a template and we called it the shift turnover inclusion. And it's very simple, it's just yes or no. Should it be included for the next crew? So I can say yes. It is a mandatory field, so you will get an error message if you don't fill in that information. So I can say yes. So what I've did is I went ahead and you can see I've got some operations things and I've got some incidents and some general things, and most of them say yes, include on the turnover report. But this is just information that I've entered today throughout the shift to for the demonstration, for the purposes of this webinar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to system administration and we are going to create a required entry. And for this one, we are going to select Synap North, and this is going to be a shift turnover log. And this one I need by the day of the week. We're going to do it a little bit different than the last one. And I want this to happen every day at the end of the shift. So I'll just say at the end of the shift, create a turnover report for the incoming shift. I should spell it correctly. Now, I want to talk a little bit about mandatory because I'm fairly confident that most of you don't use this, and I know exactly why, but I'm going to explain it anyway. If we create a mandatory required entry, and I'll go ahead and do that and show you what happens. What happens is it pretty much locks down the ability to use eLogger from people until they actually create this required entry or meet the needs of this required entry. So for a shift turnover, let's say we have two 12-hour shifts that go from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'd probably want to set one up at 5:45 a.m. and 5:45 p.m. so that it happens right before they go home. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set one up for 10:35 so that we can look at it here when it's ready. But now keep in mind that I've made this a mandatory one, and we'll look at that in just a little bit. We have to let 2 minutes pass before it's ready to go. The next thing I'm going to show you is on the templates tab what I did to get the shift turnover report. So just like on the other ones, I have to go in and I have to capture that number, looking for number 69 in this case, include on turnover. And then I'm going to go back and we're going to create a template. And this query was a little more difficult, but we're certainly happy to copy and paste these queries and send them to you if you want to try setting something up like this. You just pretty much have to replace the numbers. And again, we can have somebody work with you. Don't worry about that if you want to use this. So I've attached this to the shift turnover log for the Synapse North location, and I've created I wanted a link to the different log entries, so I've created a eLogger ID link, and then I've just grabbed the location and the comments field and then gave the user a place to put comments as well. So 3 read-only fields and a text field. Looks something like this. And this again is going to grab all my really important stuff from throughout the day to turn over to the next shift. Now this query functions the same as the other one. What it's doing is it's looking at the date and the shift on the current record, and it's saying on this date and on this shift, go collect all of the items that were set to yes on that shift inclusion. So it goes and it grabs all of those and builds a report. And I did it, just like I said, just the location and the comments made it real simple. You may choose to do something different. Now at the top of this stored procedure down here, he's actually setting up the framework for selecting what the actual date is and what the time is and what the shift is. And then down here, there's this link 70 corresponds with this, and this is actually providing a link to the individual log entries that are going to be included on this, and you'll see that when we get to the user side of it. And then we're getting the comments and the I believe we're collecting the create date and log time on this one as well. So here's my 69 number saying which field to look at. And the rest of the stuff is just saying make sure that the record's not deleted and the date and times fall into the appropriate category. Now I went ahead and clicked test query, and I didn't enter my log entry ID, which was a no-no, so let me go ahead and do that now. So here's the test it just ran. You can see this is the entry I just put in. So I got about I don't know, half a dozen records back. But you can see how that link works. It actually provides a link to the specific record in eLogger. So if I want more details, I can click on that and get those details. The create date and log time, again, out here were not fields of information I was looking at, but this helps me validate that I've written my query correctly and it's getting the right information back. So we are going to go back. My 2 minutes has passed. I should have a required entry. I do. And I'm going to go ahead and click edit on that. And since Andrew says we can change the time, let's pretend it is, how about we use the time picker? It is 6:00 p.m. It's the end of the shift, and we are going to make our entry. Now it's again already chosen the shift turnover for you. And I can, I guess comments really isn't necessary in this particular case. So I'm going to go ahead and click my Get Data. And I said this last column out here is a place for the user to make comments. So we can actually go in and edit these, and you can see these ones are read-only. You can't make any changes to those. Maybe you want to send a note to the oncoming crew. So now I have a little note for the crew who's coming in. And I can go ahead and save this record. Well, first let me show you how these links work. Let's say maybe we had some templates associated with the operations log, and I wanted to actually see the details for this. I can either click on it and it'll take me right to this. So it takes me right to the log entry itself. Let's see if my back button will work. There we go. So I can look at these different entries. And then when I'm satisfied that I have everything good here, I can click Save. And I have my shift report here. Okay, now if we wanted to put like a sign-off section on here, We could do something similar to what we did with the